The final bus of Route 375. This story happened on a dark, bleak night of November 14, 1995, in Beijing, China. An old man, although some also say it was an old woman, was waiting at a bus stop at midnight, striking up a conversation with the only other person at the stop, who was a quiet young gentleman. When the midnight bus 375, the last bus for Route 375 from the bus terminus, finally arrived, they both boarded onto it. The old man took a seat near the front of the bus while the younger man sat a couple of rows behind him. They were the only passengers aboard, and alone other than the driver and a lady ticket collector. The night became somewhat misty, and after a while, the driver spotted shadows by the side of the road in the distance, waving at the bus in a clear attempt to flag it down. The driver stopped, and when the doors opened, 3 people got on. There were 2 men who were supporting a third man between them, holding him up by his shoulders. The man in the middle was looking disheveled, and his head was bowed, with his unkempt hair hanging down and covering his face. As they entered and passed the 2 passengers already seated, making their way towards the rear of the bus, a strange unease seemed to accompany them, some feeling that the young man couldn't quite identify, but made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. As he glanced at the older man to see if he seemed to be similarly affected, the old man was already staring at him, with his eyes flashing from the young man's to the floor under the new passenger's feet, almost like he was trying without words to signal that the younger man should look where he was looking. But as he was already a little freaked out by the feeling of dread stealing over him, he refused, trusting his instincts and not wanting to aggravate the new guys in any way by staring. Shortly after that, the old man picked a fight with the younger man who'd boarded with him, accusing the young man of stealing his wallet. The altercation that started as a verbal back and forth between the 2 men soon escalated, and fearful that it might even turn violent, the bus driver forced them both off the bus. When they got off and the bus sped away, the old man was no longer angry, and when he turned to the younger man, he apologized and told the young man that he feared he had just saved their lives. He said the 3 new passengers did not look to have feet and were floating. They were not living people, he said, and that was why he'd acted as he did. After that they went to the nearest police station to report the event, but of course nobody believed them. The very next day, the bus company issued a statement, claiming that the previous night, the final bus for Route 375 has vanished along with the driver and ticket lady. The police immediately chased down the old man and the younger man, who were assumed to be a little crazy when they tried to raise the alarm earlier, and they were both interviewed extensively by the police, and later on by news crews. On the 3rd day of the search, the police discovered the missing bus in a water reservoir over 100 kilometers away from its original destination, in a place called Fragrant Hills. Inside the bus, there were 3 very badly decomposed corpses, and by their uniforms they were clearly the driver, the ticket collector, and a single passenger that the police assumed was one of the 3 men who boarded. It was put forth by one police sergeant that it was perhaps the man being carried by the other 2, and it was the other 2 missing passengers that had murdered him for reasons unknown, and that they'd killed the driver and ticket collector to get rid of any witnesses to the act. It certainly seemed within the realms of possibility, and if that was the case, the 2 men who'd been ejected were very lucky indeed to have not been a part of it themselves. This didn't explain the fact that the old man was adamant that all 3 were somehow floating and therefore not living people, however, but as only he had seen this and the younger man couldn't confirm this fact, it was thought that it was just the man's mind playing tricks on him, due in part to his advanced years, and compounded by the lateness of the hour that had his imagination running wild. Upon further investigation, however, things seemed to be even less mundane than the police could account for. Firstly, when records were checked, it turned out the bus had not refueled at any point that day, and after a full day of business the bus simply didn't have enough fuel to make an extra trip of 100 kilometers plus. Secondly, this made them suspect the fuel system even more, and upon closer inspection the tank was shockingly found to be full of human blood. Thirdly, the corpses were found to be far too decomposed for just a few days. Even in the heat of summer, decomposition would not act so swiftly on human remains, and when an autopsy was performed it confirmed that there had been no intentional tampering with the bodies to speed up decomp, nor could the coroner find any known cause of death. Fourthly, the police found that all avenues into the reservoir had security cameras, and when they were checked there was no sign of the bus whatsoever, and even to an untrained eye there was clearly no evidence of any kind of tampering to the records retrieved. To this day, the case is still open, and very much an unsolved mystery.